Welcome to today's presentation on polar white tablet coatings, a future without TiO2. My name is Adam Duxbury and I'm a Product Development Manager here at Univar Solutions, and I've been here for approximately 4 years now. I always knew when I was growing up that I wanted to work in the chemical industry, and that naturally started with me getting a degree in chemistry at the University of Newcastle upon Tyne. But my true passion is formulation and solving problems in factories with formulation. And ultimately, all of the things that we come into contact every single day, they're formulated products. That's what gets me excited every single day. So I've had about 15 years in the industry now, 11 of which were in the laboratory. And I've worked in food, pharma, personal care, BPC and HIC. And let me tell you that the formulation methods are roughly the same. There's nothing new, and sometimes an application in plastics works really well in pharma and vice versa. But the common thread in all of that is that in every job I've worked in, I've always solved problems in factories with formulations to produce finished products. And today I'm looking forward to guiding you through the presentation and a future without TiO2. So on today's agenda, we will discuss the regulatory background, the technical solutions, and the additional services that we can offer. The reason we are here today is to talk about the polar white coatings. Now, our coatings are simpler to use, easier to coat, quick to apply, and innovative. But before we dive straight into that, let's look at the background of TiO2 and how we arrived here, and specifically a future without TiO2. So where did this all start? So we're going to look firstly at the food impact. Now, if you look at the regulatory statement, titanium dioxide as a food additive is not considered safe in the EU and has been banned since the 7th of February 2022. Now, it's fair to say that the nutraceutical element of the food industry saw this coming and responded really well, but the wider food industry really struggled with this challenge. White is a key component of food products, especially decorative bakery, wedding cakes, and short shelf life products. But on the whole, the transition away from TiO2 has been pretty good in the nutraceutical market, and there are some well-established products and solutions for that industry. But where that then feeds in is that some of the challenges and problems that the food industry has encountered, the pharmaceutical industry can look at and maybe respond to those and not get caught out in the same way. So let's start with the regulatory background on this. The EU Commission shall, after consulting the European Medicines Agency, review the need to maintain TiO2 for exclusive use as a colour for medicinal products by April 2024. Now, what this means is that based on the fact that the food industry has decided to ban the use, the pharmaceutical industry is now reviewing this and deciding and determining whether they can remove it from their products. This is still going ahead. There is no change to this date. However, they have issued some guidelines and some guidance for manufacturers, and it is as follows. For products already authorised containing TiO2, the market authorisation holders should collaborate with each other regarding the research and development of replacements, especially when it comes to TiO2. Furthermore, provide a full dossier regarding all variations that will impact the product following this change. So, for example, composition, process, testing. And what it's saying there is that the industry really needs to get ready and collaborate and come up with some innovative solutions and really present these to the market so that we have some viable alternatives in place. We don't want to arrive at 2024 and have no alternative to TiO2. And from my experience, I've seen this collaboration between companies and industry bodies already. And you'll all be aware that there are products on the market that allow the removal of TiO2. The regulation then goes on to say, for new marketing authorization approval, the composition can still include TiO2 for the time being if the development work has already started, but the applicant can change or remove TiO2 before submission. So if you're halfway through developing a product, don't worry if you put TiO2 in, you can still formulate it out up to the point of submitting your EMEA. And then there are further calls on the pharmaceutical industry to make all possible efforts to accelerate the research and development of alternatives to replace TiO2 in both new and already authorised products. And this is very much the case today. And we are in some regards lucky that the food industry, specifically nutraceuticals, has gone through this process because they've done a lot of the hard work already. That isn't to say that there are still some challenges, but a lot of the teething issues have been resolved in that regard. Now, the final thing I wanted to mention is the ECHA classification. And this is really where it all started. The ECHA classification fed into food, then into pharma. And ECHA particularly looks after the classification on the label or on the safety data sheet of TiO2. Now, in November 2022, a legal challenge was brought, one relating to titanium dioxide being classified as a potentially carcinogenic substance. And the ruling determined that there was a manifest error in ECHA's assessment of the studies used, and because it was not based on an intrinsic property of the substance itself. There is still a right to challenge this ruling, and that process is ongoing, but it only impacts the ECHA classification. It doesn't have any impact on what the food industry will do or the pharmaceutical industry. Now, it's fair to say that if ECHA did change its classification, that the food industry may look at this again. But the problem you have is that because such a lot of issues have been raised around TiO2, there's a negative connotation within the food industry. And this does transfer somewhat to the pharmaceutical industry as well. But these assessments are independent of that ECHA classification. So titanium dioxide does have a multitude of functions, including whiteness, opacity, UV protection, and is a key component of colour blends. And this is often forgotten. When we think of TiO2, we think of white, but actually it affects all of those pale colours that we also use as well. And TiO2 can really perform all of these functions together. It really is the workhorse of colour formulations. And we all know the challenges associated with formulating titanium dioxide out of products. Firstly, what is permitted for use? The majority of alternatives use calcium carbonate, but on its own it is quite limited. And one of your big challenges relates to creating opacity and whiteness. And as we know, calcium carbonate on its own is poor at this. The market now realizes that there is no one-for-one replacement or a product that can achieve all of the desired effects. There are some specific coating challenges associated, namely the balance of coating weight, whiteness, and coating speed. And just to elaborate on that, if you take calcium carbonate on its own and try create the same whiteness, you're probably putting 5 to 10 times the amount of coating that you typically need to put on. And for most manufacturing environments, this is just not acceptable. So now we'll take a deeper dive into our polar white solution and how we came to solve this issue. The first thing that we did was to define the scope and identify what was truly important to our customers. We evaluated all of the materials suitable for use in coating and screened these for opacity. We also discounted materials that could not be considered, such as zinc oxide. And using experimental design, we reviewed our initial screening results and found that no one substance could do it all. So like I mentioned previously, there is no one-for-one replacement or anything where one material on its own can achieve the majority of the functions. So we really did have to review our results. We then, as we so often do, look towards nature to find our inspiration. And this is where we arrived at the polar bear. So the polar bear's fur is colourless, and the skin of the bear is often quite dark. And we observed that the light was refracting in such a way that it was masking the dark skin colour underneath. And using the experimental design, we undertook trials to replicate this effect. So in honour of our inspiration, we named the range Polar White. The initial product was developed in response to a nutraceutical requirement for food applications, but subsequently it was developed to meet the pharmaceutical specification requirements as well. So what are Polar White coatings? Our coatings are simpler to use, easier to coat, quick to apply, and innovative. And we're going to use the time now to take a deeper dive into each area. So we are simpler to use. Our coatings are fully formulated, ready to use coatings. This means that all you need to do is add them to water and mix. There's no other preparation steps. There's no weighing out colour or adding individual ingredients together. It's just add our product to water. All of our formulations are based on HPMC. This means that all the formulations we use have the same coating methodology, and they have an analogous formulation. And this is especially important when considering the layering of coatings, but it also makes training on Univar coatings much easier, because if you can use one of our coatings, you can use all of them. And all of our coatings are shade and colour matched. And this takes the headache and complexity out of using colour, which at times can be very difficult. We are easier to coat. Now, how do we achieve this? Well, all our coatings use the same basic conditions. We target the same viscosity and use for all of our blends, and this is 400 to 500 centipoise. We also target the same tablet bed temperature, which is typically between 38 and 42 degrees. This means that whichever coating you buy from us, from our white to TiO2 free to synthetic to natural, they all use these same parameters. And we tell you the settings that we're using. If you send us your tablets to try in our coating machine, we will send you a report with all the settings, tell you the limitations, the things to consider, and we tell you everything. And that means you are in full control of your coating process. There are no secrets. And the coatings are designed for rapid application, and providing that you stick to the temperature and viscosity parameter, settings such as speed, inlet air, spray rate can be varied to suit your individual requirements. And we have designed these formulations to be tough, which means that should the operational settings be substandard, it shouldn't matter. They really are robust, easy to use formulations. We are quick to apply. Now, I alluded to before that the coatings like quick application, and specific to Polar White coatings, the faster you can apply the coating, the less you need to place on in terms of coating weight to achieve a white coating. So it really favours a fast, rapid application. And what better news for a manufacturing manager than hearing the faster you can coat it, the less you need to apply, the cheaper it will be. Our solutions do disperse rapidly in water, and they don't require mixing the night before. You can even mix them up to 1 hour before use. And because our coatings are so quick to apply, the impact of changing from TiO2 to TiO2 free is minimal. And we are innovative, and this is something we're particularly proud of. And it's worth pointing out at this point that in our laboratory, we have a tableting machine that is an industrial tableting machine, and a small scale coater that is replicating what you have in your industrial facilities, a full setup. And this means that our lab is able to swiftly respond to the market needs. And we can be agile with our formulations because everything from the formulation design through to testing on your tablets is in our control. We're not relying upon anybody else to do any of that work. And we have the expertise to back it up. And should our coatings not meet your individual requirements on specification, we do have the facility to optimize it and work with you. We're not going to say, this is all you can have. We're going to work and collaborate together. And a common example is a customer may say that they cannot meet our viscosity requirement, but they still want that rapid application. Well, we can work on the polymers to design a formulation that has a similar solids content, but with a lower overall viscosity. And our innovations are colour-led. And this is really important because a lot of coatings in the market talk about the technicality of the polymer, but actually we lean on the colours to help us coat, using and exploiting the fact that it adds solids content and in some instances helps the plasticization and formation of the coating. So our innovations are all colour-led. So if we talk specifically about the products, I've picked two out here just to share with you. We have in our arsenal a range of products, but they're all based on HPMC. And depending on the grade, we can offer EP, USP, and a food regulation grade as well. We've pre-prepared all of our documentation. So we have SDSs, TDSs, CFAs, and specifications as you would expect. Information on how to use the coating, but also a full regulatory pack available at the ordering of a sample. And we can typically provide samples of between 250 gram to 1,000 gram for laboratory trials. I mentioned before that we have a lab coater, and our preference is for you always to send your tablet to us minus the API, and we will run a coating trial on your samples, send you iterations with different coating levels back, and then the target coating weight as well. And then we can have a conversation looking at the physical tablets, and this counts for both white and colour tablets. So how does it look in practical terms? Well, I mentioned before that we really focused our energy on reducing the manufacturing time. We knew when we approached this problem that you would have to apply more coating. Now, typically we recommend that you apply 1.5 to 2 times the amount of a titanium-based coating that you would use. So in the example here, if you use 2% of TiO2 coating, you'll need approximately 3 to 4% of our coating. And this is a good range to start. Ultimately, it comes down to the type of tablet, the shape and size, but this is a good ballpark to start. And when we look at alternative products in the market, this increase is pretty slim when compared with those other products. The application rate is faster, and this is because of the solids content within the formulation itself. So typically that's around 18% solids, which for a HPMC based coating, that's very high. And that results in the 40% more solids. But it's also a faster application. So the combination of the higher solids, the temperature, and the fact that it likes to be sprayed faster means that typically there's no significant change in production time. I wanted to talk now about some additional services that we offer. So if you're looking for a colour, typically you would look for coatings where the colour is already integrated within that coating. However, the way that we operate is we ask you what shade and colour do you require, and everything we do for coatings is custom. So we have experience of developing TiO2 free colour coatings. This includes naturals and synthetic coatings and oxide coatings for use in pharmaceutical applications. We've got a good history of nutraceutical options, and we have a very good understanding of the regulations and limitations of synthetic colours in food, but we also have our natural range as well. For pharmaceuticals, we have a full range of oxides and TiO2 free whites, but we can develop unique shades as well. And then the development arm of that, we can customize the formulation that we have. Now at the moment, we have 2 chassis that we typically work on, the polar white formulation and our standard HPMC formulation. But we can adjust those formulations to meet your individual requirements. So for example, if you have a different viscosity requirement, or if you wish to spray at a different temperature, or there are some specific settings that you need to take into consideration. So when you first think of colour, you think of the colour of the tablet, but actually behind all of that, we can really help to develop a unique and bespoke coating for yourself. So if I'm going to mention the natural, this is a really good example of an innovation that we worked on. So we have some vibrant alternatives to synthetic colours with outstanding opacity. Now, how did we achieve this? Well, I said that we lead developments with colour, but we try exploit the colour for coating. And in doing so, we've utilised encapsulated natural colours. And these have more of a pigment behaviour than they do of a dye. And because you've got these pigment type products on a micron scale, the longevity of the colour is much longer. And what that results in is excellent light, temperature and storage stability. And to give an example, the Anato colour typically has a shelf life on its own of about 6 months. But in a coated tablet, we can exceed over 2 years in the finished format because of that benefit of the encapsulated natural colour. Now we can support you from lab up to mainstream production, and these are compliant for nutraceutical applications in the EU and US, all of which are TiO2 free, and we can do talc free. But it's a really good representation of how we've taken a traditional problem, something that is readily available in the market, and really innovated. And because we can utilize the colour as part of the formulation, the solid content within our formulations is very, very high. What I would also say is that if you buy a red from us, the way you cut the red is the same as the blue, as the green, as the orange. They all work exactly the same. There's no difference in the way that you would approach coating those. And again, they like a rapid, quick application. So I ask if you can remember one thing from today's presentation. It's that our coatings are simpler to use, easier to coat, quick to apply, and innovative. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to our Q&A session for Polar White tablet coatings with Adam Duxbury. Adam, thank you so much for the presentation. It's wonderful to be here with you and ask you a couple of questions that we get often from different customers. I'm sure they just learned a ton of information from what you just shared. But first of all, I want to just come right out with a question, just asking a little bit more about Color by Univar Solutions. I'm curious about this brand and how expansive it is, what it offers to our customers, and if you can just share more about the global offerings that this brand has to offer.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's something I can talk at length about, to be honest, because we don't talk enough about what we do at Colour. So Univar Solutions is known globally as a distributor of colour, but what is not so well known is the fact that the colour division actually blends its own colour, and it's unique in Univar in that we can actually make something bespoke for customers' needs. So that site itself in the UK has been operating now around about 65 years. And what they don't know about colour isn't worth knowing, right from synthetic oxides all the way through to natural colours. And they've done everything with colour that you can think of. So we have facilities on site for dry and wet mixing. We can handle ATEX powders, and we can do a multitude of things, including mixing those colours with ingredients used within your formulation. And we typically handle things like food ingredients, pharma ingredients, and BPC ingredients on site. In terms of reach, we sell these products globally, quite a proportion into Europe, but we also sell into the US, South America, and across to the Far East as well. So our reach is global, and there are no challenges to us selling colour all over the world.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you so much for just elaborating a bit more on that. Now, this next question is one that is probably one of our most common questions when it comes to a topic like this. And that is, how much coating would a customer need to apply if they were aiming to achieve a white coating on a tablet?
Yeah, this is a really key question, and it's probably the most common question I get for TiO2 coatings.
Yeah.
So I noted in the presentation that we typically recommend 1.5 to 2 times the amount that you would apply of a TiO2 coating. And the reason for this is that we've really designed and engineered our formulation to have the lowest increase in coating. Everybody knows that you've got to put more on, but the amount depends on the formulation, and ours is one of the slimmest formulations. This means that the difference between what you were applying initially to the free from grade is quite small. So if you have a tablet that's 2%, typically you're targeting 3 to 4% with our coating for the TiO2 free. But I would elaborate on that and say that all tablets are slightly different. And depending on your tablet, you can engineer that a little bit more. And that's where we come in. So we have our coating laboratory, where we have a coating pan that is a mirror image of what you have in production, including the spray heads and the settings. And we can take your tablet minus the API, stick it in our machine, coat it with our product, give you iterative levels of coating and a full coating report as well. And it might be that you think, actually, I can get away with 1.2 times. Or it might be that you've got a Nutri tablet and you want to apply a little bit more for a safety factor. But all of this knowledge gives you that guidance, but it also takes the complexity out of using a formulation of this type.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much. Well, I know obviously we just spent some time talking about white coatings. So talk to me a little bit now about your experience with TiO2 free color coatings. So what are the coatings within the scope of the solution centers and their lab capabilities? What might you be able to tell us about your experience with that?
Yeah, this is another great question, because obviously when we think of TiO2, we naturally think of white, but TiO2 goes into the majority of color coatings, and especially things like browns, where it's a constituent part. And simply just replacing it one for one with chalk is not good enough. It just won't work. Now, what we did in the past, and because of our experience with other industries, we've really leaned on our expertise of removing the TiO2 and what else we can put in its place. And subsequently, we proactively developed some shades, some yellow, pink, blue, and beige shades to counter-type the existing ones in the market. These are the most common colors that you would see requested. But what I would say is that should you have any specific requirements, we can also formulate this out. The other thing that we have for the Nutri market is our natural colors. The encapsulated naturals are really a good alternative, and they are naturally TiO2 free. So you get this bright, vibrant color without the need of an opacifier or the softening of the TiO2. So we have a multitude of formulations, but a lot of expertise behind that because of some of the work we've done in food and BPC in the past.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure color selection in tablets is something really interesting and a fun discussion to have with different customers that you might work with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's really useful because quite often color isn't seen as an active ingredient. It's seen as a functional material just to give color. But where we really lean on our expertise is we're using it to build up some part of the formulation. So it's adding something to the solids content, but we can also utilize some of the colors to add some of the film forming properties as well. So really, when we're looking at changing color, we're not just thinking of the color as an individual ingredient. We're thinking of how we can exploit that to best optimize the formulation. And there have been cases where we've looked at a counter type and come up with a new formulation where we've been able to really exploit the properties of color to improve the coating parameters.
That's great. Thanks so much. Okay, so we had a customer come to us recently, and we're kind of hopping back to tablets now. But so for a model, they had a modeled tablet, and they were finding it difficult to coat and hide spots in the tablet. So what type of solution might you offer for a challenge like this with a customer?
Yeah, this is a really common thing that we see in the industry at the moment, where the TiO2 in the past was hiding a multitude of sins underneath the tablets, mottling and damage and things like this, where you get differences in shade and color. So what we did is we looked at what the industry commonly does, which is apply a clear coating, then the white coating on top. Now, under normal circumstances, that would be enough. But with a TiO2 free coating, you could still see the spots coming through. It just wasn't enough. And even when we screened putting a clear on then TiO2 free, it just wasn't acceptable to us from a quality level. And I would say that our acceptable limit on colour is probably higher than most. We wouldn't release the product unless we're, truly happy with it. So we looked at the challenge and thought, actually, we think we should cap it with an oxide. So that's what we did. We came up with a special coating based on iron oxide, and this totally hides and masks and caps the spots and mottling. Now, this might seem counterintuitive to put a colour underneath, because you would intuitively think, I've got to put more white coating on. This is just not the case. You put the same amount of coating that you would apply on top of a clear layer, and you can completely hide that oxide layer. But what you don't get is the propagation of those spots or the mottling coming through that coating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. So, well, thanks so much. All right, now one final question for today, and that is, if customers or suppliers are interested in engaging with your team, starting a project within one of our solution centers, what would that next step be for them?
Yeah, this is a really important point. So I would always encourage everybody to reach out to their local account manager. This is your day-to-day contact. However, if you've got any idea of a project, they can pull myself or one of my colleagues in from the Solution Centre. And we're available globally. And quite often on a day-to-day basis, we're speaking to people from around the world on a variety of different projects. And where we can really add value is that the account managers can really help you with a day-to-day relationship, but we can add that technical value. I mean, my expertise is in coating, and I can coat most of these products with my eyes closed. That's how many times that we've done them. So when you're talking to us about problems or challenges, we really understand it on a very basic level of the things that are going wrong or the challenges you're having or what you're trying to solve. Now, we would form a project together with the account manager and yourselves, understanding your regulatory requirements, your colour requirements and coating requirements. And we also like to get in your tablets to our coating machine, because nothing is better than seeing the colour on your tablets. And that's where we really like to partner up. This isn't just a transactional relationship. We really care about what we're doing, and we want to give you the best coating for your facility. And nothing makes me happier than when I hear a report of a trial in a factory and it's gone fantastically. So please reach out to your local account manager. We work globally with the account managers. There's somebody within our solution centres that can support you. I've said to you before, Monica, that our solution centres have such expertise that we can support right from APIs all the way through to coated tablets and everything in between. And that it might not just be the coating that is of a significance to a discussion. We might also need to discuss the tablet formulation to help improve the coating and vice versa. So please lean on us for expertise. Please ask us for information, and please contact your local account manager.
That's great. Thank you so much, Adam. It has been so wonderful speaking with you, and we so appreciate all of our customers and suppliers who joined us for this important session today. We've learned a lot, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.